Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sloppy Lab. This is Bottom of the Beaker, the weekly show about the design, ducks, and strategy of Keyforge, everyone, and I mean everyone's favorite unique deck game. I'm JT Russell. My co-host tonight is a man who I don't have to tell him twice that I can't keep up with 3, 4, 5, 6, or even 7 new sets a year. So we'll see how that goes. I'm, of course, talking about Quick Draw 3457. How's it going, Quick Draw?
Doing pretty good this evening, JT. Thank you. And I think my brain would melt if we had 3,457 new sets in a year.
That's a lot.
Um, I'm good with two.
Good with two. Well, then we'll see how that goes. And we have a special guest in the lab tonight, a villain, as it were, the villainous hyramgraff. Welcome to the lab, hyramgraff. Very excited to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on.
Well, sorry, I cut you off there, quick trial. What were you
No,
gonna say?
just welcome, hyramgraff. Thank you for joining us. And just for anyone that's not familiar, we're not calling you a villain because you are like our arch nemesis. You belong to the Keyforge team, the Villains of Tyranny, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So it was a term of endearment.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
I was talking more like villain, like evil and stuff.
yeah,
Just
I can be that sometimes, but yeah, more of a local henchman than anything.
There you go. I remember a game of diplomacy where I don't know, maybe both could fly. well, we go way back in the Keyforge world, as it were. Anyway, Hiram Graph, we've played many a Time Shapers League together in the past, and had some great battles there. Lots of cool formats to be sure. But you know, not our topic for this evening. We have actually a fun couple of topics at least in store for tonight. Going to get to know a little bit about you, your playstyle, and what you learned to love about Keyforge from some other games, particularly Dominion, and then also get into some of your thoughts on what it means to be a semi-competitive player in today's environment of Keyforge, as it were. We have had topics in the past that we've covered about lessons learned from other games. It's probably something we'll cover more in depth or revisit later on too. So this is a great one for us, and I think a lot of folks are gonna really jive with the notes and the topics that we have. So excited to see where we go. Yeah.
All right, great.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Dominion. I am not as into it as you are. I know as we're preparing for this, I was kind of like, oh yeah, I love Dominion, and I love it casually. And then you were dropping all these amazing links with lots of like in-depth strategy in Dominion. Then I'm like, oh man, if I read too much about this, then my friends and family are not going to want to play Dominion with me anymore because there is some good stuff in there that we just really enjoy playing it all the time. I think a lot of listeners probably can relate to it as well. So hopefully this can be a good one. But we'll tie it back to Keyforge too. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I guess I think it makes sense probably to just kind of describe what Dominion is for the few people who aren't familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
But Dominion is a deck building game created by is it Donald X Vaccarino? I think it's how you pronounce his last name.
Yep.
It may not have been the first deck building game, but it was definitely the one to popularize it. Won the Spiel des Jahres in I think 2008. I want to say very popular, lots of expansions. I think they're still printing expansions to this day, so that gives
Yeah.
you some idea of how popular it is.
I thought, didn't they say that they were done with expansions like 6 or 7 years ago, and then they're like, oh, just kidding. Here's like five more.
Yeah, I think Donald might have said that, but yeah, they keep making money, so they keep printing them.
I stopped getting. I have almost all the expansions up to a certain point. I forget the last one that I got though. But it just became like it's so much fun to me, like the earlier ones. And there are certain things that I like about Seaside and about Cornucopia, Dark Ages. Definitely, I really enjoyed that one. But then, like as they started adding more and more mechanics to it, I started like, I don't know if I need this. Like, I enjoy the base game and the earlier stuff enough, and
Hmm.
there might be some relatability with that concept too, with our normal audience here.
Yeah, yeah. So Yeah, I mean, so when I was playing Dominion frequently, I was actually playing mostly on a fan created online server, isotropic.org. That was closed down for good once the first official digital client came out for Dominion. But yeah, so I mean, back then, it was very easy. It was very much like TCO.
Hmm.
Two people say like, I want to play a random match, and you get together and you play a game in about 10 or 15 minutes, and you don't have to physically shuffle the cards. That's the best part of the digital.
It took your Dominion game from a half an hour to 15-minute affair, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Totally.
yeah. I mean, so yeah, Dominion overall is a pretty simple concept. You start out with a deck of cards, 10 cards. Three of them are estates, which are victory point cards, give you 1 point if they're in your deck at the end of the game. The other seven are copper, which are worth 1 coin, and you can't carry coins over from turn to turn. You play what you have. I guess it's supposed to be like whatever tax income or income you get from your holdings that particular turn. But there is a theme to Dominion. It's very very light, um, but if you look for it, it's there.
Excellent.
But yeah,
Yeah, and
like
so you acquire cards through the supply piles throughout the game using those coins that you accumulate turn to turn. And so you can get bigger treasures than just the coppers eventually, and then the bigger treasures you get, the better cards you can buy, the more things you can do, et
yeah,
cetera, et cetera.
absolutely. Yes, and the game, you know, the core of the gameplay, you can play one action card per turn. Then you can play any treasures that you have and buy one card, and then you clean up where you discard everything that you played and discard your whole hand and draw a new hand of 5 cards. Yeah, so I mean, like Slay the Spire is taking that concept. Lots of different. Ascension took that concept. Lots of different games are now deck builders, but Dominion was the first real popular one.
Mm. And there's, I don't know, there's almost a like an upside down cake comparison to Keyforge in there in a lot of ways. It's got the one buy happens at the end, kind of like forging a turn. You get one forge, doesn't matter if you can afford two keys, and yeah, you can get more buys, but just face value, you can get one. And then there's a less incentive or no incentive to hold cards, like your MTGers might like to. So it's kind of a different way of
Yeah,
looking at resources and card advantage than some of uh, other games might. Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's absolutely use it or lose it each
Yep.
turn.
Everybody starts the game with Curse of Spontaneity in front of them.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly ahead of its time. Am I behind the time?
Still not up to date on all the
Oh, sorry.
GR rares.
Curse of Spontaneity is the curse from Grim Reminders that says it's got treachery. You give it to your opponent, and at the start of their draw phase, their draw segment, they discard their entire hand and refill their hand to their hand limit. So
Okay, yeah,
basically, in Dominion, where each turn you are whatever you don't use in your hand, you lose it. You discard it, you draw a new hand, and start over again.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. So each game there's 7 common supply piles. There's 3 victory point cards, states, duchies, and provinces, and then there's 3 levels of treasure. You've got copper, silver, and gold, and then the last one is the curse pile. You know, Curses are kind of things, cards given out by attack cards, where it's worth -1 points if it's in your deck at the end of the game, and it does absolutely nothing if it's in your hand.
They are brutal. They
They
we
can be,
in our casual gaming, we have very often been like, okay, like we're just not putting any curse cards in this game because someone is gonna like take the plunge and buy all the attack cards to give your opponents the curses, and everyone else is gonna groan about it and slows the game down. And so sometimes we just omit those cards and
yeah,
put something else in there.
yeah, and that's definitely a lot of people choose to play that way. Or yeah, so in addition to those 7 base supply cards, each game has 10 randomly selected kingdom cards, they call it. So these are their mostly actions, sometimes treasures, sometimes victories. But most time you have 10 cards of each of those 10 piles that can be bought or gained. And yeah, so the game ends when the province pile has been emptied, or if three of the other piles have been emptied.
Hmm. So the win condition there is to have the most victory points when one of those two end game conditions is triggered, being the most uh, the most valuable victory point card is depleted and no more in the supply, or three different supplies are depleted. And so there's a lot of incentive to track secretly in your head, like how many points you have, how many points your opponent has. So you definitely need a good memory, I would say, to track that and understand who has how many points. It gets a little bit tricky when you're playing 3 or 4 person games and there's curses involved. You have pluses and minuses,
Yeah,
and you have to pay enough attention to be like, okay, like I am winning this game, and I should try to end the game right now if I can, right?
yeah. Like I haven't played it much at 3 or 4 players. Dominion definitely handles it. It can go up to 5 or 6 with some expansions. But it's a much different game at 2 player.
Hmm.
2 player it makes a very great dual game. Um, so that's what I've played the most.
Interesting. I've almost exclusively played 3 to 4. I've played a little bit of two, just with my wife, but 3 to 4 players is like been the sweet spot for me. It's usually, we have friends over for a game night, and I have a Dominion big box, organized, sleeved, everything ready to go, and it's pretty nice for that. So I've often played 4 players, sometimes
Yeah,
5 or 6.
yeah. So yeah, again, like at 2 players, it's you keeping track of points is often a lot easier. Often you just need to count the number of provinces because well, in a 2 player game, there's only 8 provinces, 8 of the victory cards. So you count how many you have, or you count how many your opponent has, and whoever gets to 4 or 5 is probably going to win.
Hmm.
You obviously, like duchies and other victory card victory point cards can change that, but at the simplest level, you want to win the province split, or if you just go 4-4, then you need to win the duchy split or the estates.
Hmm. Yeah, and I wanna I wanna kind of set you up here. So if I'm playing a 3 or 4 person game, uh, how would you refer to that? Like, what is that? Is that a multiplayer game or?
Yes, it is. It is a multiplayer game. A lot of people, they talk. Okay, so Keyforge is a 2 player game, but if you want to, play Keyforge with 3 or 4 people, like a lot of people call that a multiplayer game of Keyforge. And one of my big pet peeves is that a 2 player game is a multiplayer game.
Because there are multiple players.
Multiple players. Yeah, I mean,
I am a big fan of pet peeves, so
yeah,
I'm very happy to talk about this if you like.
yeah. So, but yeah, like 3 players, 4 players, it is different from 2 player in that you have multiple opponents. So it makes sense to call it a multi-opponent game, but not a multiplayer game because 2 players is a multiple. 1 player is single, 2 players multiple.
I've
You know
seen
what
a
they
few
say.
decks that feel like they're not multiplayer games. I don't
uh,
know.
I just played with my brother tonight, and he definitely did not feel like he was playing a multiplayer game against my Grim
um,
Reminders deck. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
mean that happens with some control decks,
it
but
yeah.
does indeed. It does
Mhm.
indeed. Some that I
I,
enjoy dearly.
kind of related to, since you were describing Dominion as a deck building game, I
Hmm.
had one of my locals who listens to the show, thank you, who kind of called us out a few months ago because I guess we triggered his pet peeve where we called Alliance a deck building format, whereas it is not a deck building format, it is a deck construction format. And so um, I remember that as you were kind of describing Dominion as like a deck builder, which is the technical term for games like Dominion, where you're, you know, building
yeah.
your deck throughout the course of the game, as opposed to entering into like a CCG game where you have constructed a deck beforehand to play.
Mm.
Yeah, well, I suppose that just depends on when you count the start of the gameplay. Because if the
Hmm.
gameplay starts when you buy the cards, then you part of create constructing your deck is deck building, and that's part of the gameplay. But that's like definitely splitting very fine hairs.
Well, like I said, I'm here for the pet peeves. I'm all
Well,
about it.
I mean, an interesting point though, splitting fine hairs, but also getting to the crux of where folks fall on whether or not they enjoy Alliance. Say, right? If you consider
Mhm.
the time that you spend thinking about the game as part of the game before you actually sit down and play, that is a big part of you know the percentage of your time that you spend actually playing it. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
But
and
anyway, we
that's
digress.
yeah. On that digression, I mean, that's part of what drove me to Keyforge is I enjoy the gameplay of other CCGs,
Mhm.
but I am terrible at deck building. Um,
Hmm.
Very much tend towards win more decks that can't win at all. So, but hey, like, okay, give me a deck of cards, and I don't have to think about it, and I'll play it and see what I can do with it. And
Yeah.
in some ways, I guess that's kind of like Dominion in a way. Bring this back to that because Dominion, you've got 10 Kingdom cards, and you think even just swapping out any one of those 10 cards with a different random card can change the texture, the the flavor of the game quite drastically. Depending on what cards changed out and what cards brought in. So there's definitely a big component of reading the kingdom, seeing what's there, and understanding what it can do, what its strengths are, what its weaknesses are. So that's definitely something I learned to do with Dominion.
I can see a lot of parallels between reading that spread, reading the kingdom as it were, and looking at an Archon list and kind of saying, yeah, I see how the pieces are going to fit together. I can see beyond the individual cards that are here to how this thing is going to function as like a running machine down the road. Is it just going to try and jam Amber, or are there pieces that work together to make something bigger than what just is like what is listed? I had a match against one of Riku's decks last week, couple weeks, and I think I even streamed the match and looked at it. And I was like, yeah, this is a value deck. It's got a few good cards, but there's not really any crazy combos. And then 3 turns in, it's like 6 things working together to like make this monstrous combination. Like, oh my gosh, I did not see this lurking at all.
Was
And
that was that Warden Fun Run?
it was, I don't. It might have been Fun Run. I can't remember. We'll put it in the
Fun
show
Run looks
notes.
like that to me too. But that also kind of like harkens back to the famous episode we had in season one with Astron of empathy and being able to see an Archon card and understand what their game plan is and what they're trying to go for. Um, and so that's an interesting connection you made, JT, with Dominion, being like you have to be able to see the kingdom and kind of read that like you would read an Archon card to kind of envision how the game is going to develop over time. Would you agree with that, Hiram Graph?
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of kingdoms are amenable to what's called engine building, where you
Mm-hmm.
basically create a deck that can draw the entire deck every turn pretty consistently, and then you add in lots of treasure cards, and then you know you can have some huge explosive turns where you're buying like 2 or 3 provinces in a single turn. Um, and that
Mm-hmm.
style of a deck, it takes a while to get going, but once it gets going, it's very explosive versus something that's more like what they call like a big money style, where you maybe buy 1 or 2 cards that can draw you cards, but no extra actions, and you just fill up your deck with silver and copper, and then sorry, silver and gold, and buy provinces when you can. Once you've got like 2 or 3 golds in your deck,
Mm-hmm.
so you're buying them one at a time, but you get to that faster. But
Hmm.
being able to read the it definitely takes some skill to read the board and read the kingdom and say, okay, this is they've got these cards that provide actions, these cards that provide extra buys, these cards that provide extra coins, and what and draws definitely is essential for an engine like that.
Would you say that in Dominion there are certain player styles where like some player A might gravitate towards a big money and player B might gravitate towards that engine building? Or does it 100% depend on the board and a good player is going to have to change their style based on the kingdom?
Yeah, so the best players, I think definitely it's definitely driven by the board. Actually, it's been a long time since I played Dominion at all competitively, but some of what sets apart the desk players is understanding, how fast, how strong an engine is. Seeing an engine where other players might not see one. Um, yeah, it's a you'd be surprised at how many kingdoms are you can build an engine out of,
Hmm.
and engines are extremely powerful. It, it takes getting run over by one like two or three times, and you start to realize, okay, I was not expecting that to be that powerful, but it
Hmm.
is at the end.
I appreciate that the best players read the board and then can decide which way to go. I go for the engine every time. I'll admit. If it's not there,
Yeah.
we're gonna try and force it. Nice.
Yeah,
And
And I think that's maybe like kind of akin to, not having that empathy in Keyforge, of like saying my deck has a plan and I need to stick with my plan, and I love my plan. I'm going to lose or win or lose with it, right? But being able to adapt, I think, to what your opponent might be doing against you, I think maybe, a loose parallel, I would say.
yeah,
I mean, there's an absolute parallel too with, yeah, have a plan, keep doubling down, tunneling in on it, wanting to do the thing. There's also these pivot points in the game where you're like, do I need to keep building or do I now need to make the dash to the finish line? Right? Do I need to like
Mm.
yep,
keep reinforcing this engine, buying more, pumping more efficiency into it, or is it time to start making a dash for those provinces, and just say, yeah, my engine is going to get a little bit of sand in the gears, but it's time to score some victory points, as it were, or maybe I need to. I'm not sure what the direct parallel is, but I need to like stop going wide on the board and start actually like cashing in on my big archives for some monies. I'm not sure.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. I mean, so there's not a great parallel between the engine building in Dominion and what you do in Keyforge. Like, there's some decks that can rule of six, but that's not. Um, yeah, that's very few decks that can do that. As to the amount of kingdom building or engine building that you can do in Dominion.
mm,
Hmm.
Um,
mm-hmm.
but yeah, so that part doesn't have a great parallel. Although I will, as an aside, I'll say that if someone managed to combine a unique deck name with a deck building, I would be all over that. I'm trying to see if I can make that work. That's one of my pet designs.
Oh, cool.
Hmm. Very interesting.
Hmm.
I know you villains are all into game design, which is fascinating to me too. Like as someone who used to design uh, CCG a CCG game, like uh, sort of, I wouldn't say it's at the fun level, at the casual level. It was, it wasn't for profit, it wasn't a job, but it was, a very serious hobby and responsibility that I had. So I definitely appreciate like all of the villain's approach to like careful game design and kind of introducing new things and new ways to play games. It's always been really interesting to me.
Yeah,
I definitely do, and I think having played Dominion before I found Keyforge uh, plays into this too. But I really do love the like self purge decks that will use the archive as a like secondary purge zone, just so that you can whittle your deck down to an engine. Has like, instead of building up in like as you would with Dominion, you're kind of whittling down to where that engine, carving it from marble, as it were. Um, I don't know. To me, it feels very similar, but I think I totally take the point that yeah, you can look from the vast collection of Keyforge decks out there and find the ones that can do that. But sitting down to play sealed versus looking at a random spread or a random kingdom on the Dominion side, you're way more likely to see engine potential on the Dominion side than on the Keyforge side. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the game's designed that way. So
totally,
yeah,
totally.
yeah. So yeah. So after I played Dominion Long Line for a little bit, I was kind of interested in what different strategies were, how to get better. And that's when I found the dominionstrategy.com. Um, and so they have a bunch of, you know, still have a bunch of articles on strategy. I think one of the ones I shared, probably the biggest strategy that's not like immediately obvious to people playing Dominion is what's called the PPR, the penultimate province rule. Basically, the short version of that is don't buy the next to last province if your opponent can buy the final province and win the game. But yeah, so I think what's one of the things that I picked up from Dominion is understanding that the folks who are good at the game, and they have these heuristics, these rules that make sense to follow. Like sort of for Keyforge, we've got ABC, always be checking. Whereas Dominion, it was the PPR, and there are times when it makes sense to violate that rule. To it's not a hard and fast rule; it's more of a principle. But um, when you do it, you got to know why you're doing it and have a good reason for it. Um, so yeah, so if you play, have a choice between going to check or a turn that takes you to only 4 or 5 amber, you need to have a good reason for why you're taking that line of play.
Yeah, very easy. I find myself guilty of this trap, right? Looking at a hand with 4 cards of a house, but not a way to make amber, 4 or 5 cards of one house, but not a way to make amber, versus a board that can get me to check, and feeling a very strong pull toward the turn that moves cards, as opposed to the turn that maybe gets me to check. So yeah, this is kind of, I don't know, at least good to have in your mind. Like, no, getting to check is kind of a big deal. We should weigh that maybe weigh that maybe a little
Yeah.
more carefully. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, if your opponent can instantly kill a Brand and steal all the amber or things like that,
Sure.
then
Sure.
those are okay, that's the time where I don't need to generate the amber, but that's, again, you understand this is the general principle, but here's
Hmm.
why I'm not following it this turn.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's like one of the hardest things that new players are trying to learn is like you have these heuristics and it's great, but like how do you understand like when to break those? Like I've heard a lot of new players say like, that's a really hard thing to pick up. Like how do I know, when to hold a card or when to discard a card, and when to, how much do I need this board wipe in this game, or how long should I hold this TMTP before I just like, you know, throw it away for nothing? Like that kind of thing is definitely hard for players coming into Keyforge. And so like, how would you relate like your like growth in Dominion to kind of your growth as a player in Keyforge as well?
Yeah. So, my suggestion for warning when to break the rule is to just follow the rule, whether you think it's a good idea or not. To at that time, you follow it, and then if it turns out that you were wrong, you'll find out and learn from it. Like, okay, that was definitely a spot where I could have broken the rule. Or if
Hmm.
you think it's wrong, but you follow it anyway and it works out, and you're like, okay, maybe I was wrong about, deviating.
And maybe you learn something from that, like doing
Yeah,
something that you would intentionally think like, I believe this is a bad idea, but I'm going to do it to learn from it, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've done that a lot. Um, I used to have a rule where every time I'd get a deck, if I thought that there was a card that was like a bad card for the deck, I would play it just to see how bad it really is.
Hmm.
Um, and I've broken that rule with one of my more recent decks. It's a Pester Grove, and I'm like, I really don't want Pester Grove in this deck.
Mm.
And I've yet to play it, but I need to just play it to figure out like how bad is this, like, or maybe I'll see something I'm not thinking of, and so yeah, I definitely appreciate that kind of rule of like, you know, try to make a mistake and see how bad it hurts you.
Tudor
Yeah,
Belmiro falls in that camp for me. I think a lot of people are hating on it a lot more than it deserves. That card should get played
Mm.
a lot more than people do, is my opinion. Or love being played more than people do. I don't know what the right way to say it is. You know what I mean. People are down on Tudor Benrilla, and I think that if they gave him more chance, might be
Tutor
surprised.
Benrillo is the Equidon creature. Play, you may discard up to 3 cards. Your opponent draws a card, or
That's the one.
scrap. Both players draw a card.
Yes.
Um, I every time I have that card in my hand, I just like I panic and I freeze and I don't know what to do. I'm like, I want to do nothing with this, but I can't hold it, and I don't know what to do, and I just sit there and go back and forth on it, and then I end up making the wrong decision. But I'm like, all I learned is I don't want to play decks with Tutor Benrillo in them.
Oh.
that that is a valid lesson to learn, I think.
And my name deck from Grim Reminders has 3 of them.
Ooh. Okay.
The universe is calling you to
Yeah.
the tutor Binar. You're a TBR. I don't know. Quick draw. Watch out. Yeah.
uh,
But this is, I mean, this is great, great. Sage advice though. Follow ABC. Follow even ABCD until you feel like, no, this is absolutely a case when I shouldn't, and you can build up your intuition that way. Um, I like that a lot. And even still, for new players who are kind of working out right when to, like, I don't know if I should hold this or not. Like, don't hold cards at all. Then you'll get to a point when you're like, no, I really should have held that card. Like, all right, like now we've like leveled up our understanding, sort of a thing. Um, hopefully, hopefully, true signal, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
hope.
No, I know that GR was designed to kind of kind of test that behavior, that assumption that you should never hold a card, and that does lead to interesting game places, game spaces.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you had one of the other things you said you wanted to kind of bring up and talk about is puzzles, which is something that are we're pretty interested in over in the Sloppy Lab, and we have a puzzles channel that we have not used like we hoped we would use it. But can you talk a little bit about like what kind of puzzles you see in Dominion, either in a a scenario that's made up as a learning experience, or maybe like each game is a puzzle? Like how does how does that work for you?
Yeah. So on the DominionStrategy.com forums, they had a section for puzzles, and people would um, basically come up with things that you would normally not do. Like when does it make sense to buy a curse? A curse costs zero. It objectively makes your deck worse. But when is it a good idea to do that? People would try to come up with answers of, okay, well, why would that be the case?
Is this like a common like competitive play where it's like, yep, I got like four buys, I'm just gonna buy four curses? Like, does that come up frequently?
No, no, it doesn't. But that this is I enjoy the kind of puzzle solving. So to give an answer to when it makes sense to buy a curse. So in Cornucopia expansion, there's the victory card that gives you points for the number of differently named cards you have in your deck.
Hmm.
So if you and it makes sense to go from you get for every five differently named cards.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have 14 differently named cards, you buy the curse. That's your 15. So even though you've lost a point, you gain 1 point for every was it vineyards I think you have in your deck.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a time where it makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah.
But
Or the curses count as a supply pile, right? So if
yep.
it's the third supply pile and you know you have like a 6 point advantage, you've got some extra buys, buy a few curses, and you're still safe as long as you're keeping a good count, and you're finishing a supply pile, right?
Um, yeah, but those really finishing off the curses is probably only best done on the last turn of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yeah,
Because
for sure.
there's never there's pretty much no reason you want a curse in your deck um, if you're going to ever draw it again.
Hmm.
You have
Yeah,
to realize that you're talking to the man who loves chains over there. So
you do. They make a more interesting game.
yes. Yeah,
I
exactly.
feel like we should play a Dominion format where everyone starts with, you know, X curses,
You can
and
take
they.
Yep.
three curses in order to
Ooh,
have an upside to some of your other cards.
I'm.
There you go.
You can start with the five copper hand if you decide to start the game with like three curses.
Nice, nice.
Could be
Yeah,
worth
it
it
could be.
sometimes.
Could be worth it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So, you know, a more extreme example of a puzzle is when does it make sense to buy in two-player game? There's only 10 curses. When does it make sense to buy all 10 curses?
Hmm. I mean, it'd be very hard to do that in a single turn.
Yes, it'd be hard, but when is that the right strategic play? When is that the right call strategically?
I think it would. I would go back to my previous example where it's like you're ending the game by buying all 10, and you have more than a 10 point lead at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Mm-hmm.
the example I was thinking of is, say you've got some like trash for value engine. So the estate pile has been emptied and trashed, and you've got a bunch. Let's say like you've got all 10 markets in your deck. So you can just need like one other buy to get up to 12 buys. So if you get 16 coins, 12 buys, then you've two piles already empty, so you can buy two provinces, which is 12 points, and then buy out the curse pile,
Hmm.
which is -10. You still up 2 points, and you win the game. And the interesting thing is that once you know that that's possible, and your opponent knows that that's possible, it actually changes the way that you play the kingdom a little bit, because um, instead of letting your opponent, buy out the entire market pile, maybe you might decide that you need to buy one or two of them to keep them from getting all 10, so that they can't just
Hmm.
have that out of nowhere in the game.
Yeah. Wow. That's
Yeah,
a line that I wouldn't have thought of.
yeah, and that's one of those things that as you get more skilled with Dominion, it's seeing those. Okay, well this line of play will let me end the game on three piles and win. So at beginners play, most games end with the provinces emptying, but at the expert play, a lot more games end with a three pile ending, because of how the both players are building that image in to the very edge, but you don't want to get too close to the edge, because then your opponent can just win the game right there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I think, and the dynamic intention you're talking about reminds me a lot of playing in a game where in a Keyforge game where there are key cheats in play, and
Mm-hmm.
yes, we're playing this game where you get to forge for 6 at the start of your turn, and I'm like managing your progress towards that. But there's also this other game where I'm like, no, I have to worry about you getting to 3 and having like 2 untamed dudes, plus I know you've got 2 untamed pips that are still coming, and there's this other aspect that we're managing as well, and being aware of those is something that comes with a little bit more experience, and often involves, kind of, to use your words, some more lateral thinking at times, and can require some, yeah, more out of the box thinking too, which is kind of nice. It comes from some of those reps and intuition building. Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely. So it once you once you start to look for things, like if you know that um, there's a Tesmal lockout, or a soft lock essentially, that's possible, you can see, okay, it makes sense to try to play into this soft lock to win the game. And on the flip side of things, if your opponent plays a Tesmal and you realize, oh, I don't have good creature control for this, you need to like immediately change your tactics to getting that Tesmal off the board.
Yeah.
And maybe not people don't see it that way as frequently, but I think that's understanding alternate game ending conditions is
Hmm.
something that definitely affects how you play turn to turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a good question from the chat. We could answer, I guess, this in terms of either Keyforge or Dominion, I suppose. But is maybe this is more Keyforgey, but is there an inflection point where kind of the puzzle doesn't matter at a competitive level, and you kind of just do what your deck wants you to do in normal solo play, or I don't know, blinders up, ignoring a little bit. I think that can be the case if your with power levels high enough, but I don't know if there are kind of other scenarios where it really super comes into play.
Yeah, well, I think part of it is that high level Keyforge, most of the decks that are being played don't have those interesting cards in them.
Mm,
Um, like so, um, not you know, cards like Creative Nurture is a
hmm
great card for doing all sorts of fun shenanigans, but like hardly anybody plays a deck with that. Maybe maybe if people look at it more and understand the kind of combos that you can create with that, maybe there's a more competitive deck that people are overlooking. But at the moment, there's a lot of the decks that are being played at top level, as far as I know, are kind of boring in that they don't have Tesmals, they don't have Resting Guttis, they don't have the key imps or things like that.
hmm.
Hmm. You mentioned Creative Nurture. It's a card that I've often looked at as like, man, I wonder how I can combo this, and I've yet to find a deck that can combo with it. But it is a untamed artifact from Worlds Collide. It says Omni, sacrifice Creative Nurture. If you do, reveal a creature from your hand and choose a creature in play. For the remainder of the turn, the chosen creature gains the text box of the revealed creature. So you basically are giving a creature on the board the text of a card that's a creature that's in your hand. It's very hard to take advantage of. It's not going to work with play effects. It would either be static effects that are going to help you that turn, or fight or reap effects that are going to help you that turn. Um, and back in Worlds Collide, there were some things that were cute, but it was hard to find really good combos with that.
Yeah, I've got it. Creative Nurture is a great card for puzzles, and trying to figure
Yeah.
out, okay, what can
Yeah.
be done. But I've got a deck that's got the Sensi Rex Golden Spiral combo,
Mm-hmm.
um, and with that, all you need is a single Saurian creature on the board, and you can pop the combo off from hand because you don't need to have the Golden Spiral in play already. Because you essentially have a second Sensi Rex that can ready up your Golden Spiral the turn you play it.
Right.
Hmm.
I was gonna say I could swear that I got blown out by a Creed combo deck that featured Cincy Rex. It may have been playing you. I don't know if this was your deck you're talking about. Yes, yeah, but yeah, I've seen it happen. It's happened to me at least once. I don't know. I don't remember the deck, but that was what immediately jumped to mind. So I'm glad you said that.
And so, just to make sure I understand the ruling here, so if you reveal the Cincinnatus Rex, which says after fight you may exalt Cincinnatus Rex, if you do, ready each other friendly card. That self-referential text will be applied to the creature on the board, correct? So, like,
Correct.
the
Hmm.
creature on the board can be named Com Officer Kirby, and it's going to have that text, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And like same ruling goes for using Creative Nurture and revealing a Hex Beyond. Hex Beyond says Archive Hex Beyond. Well, the self-referential. It's a self-referential to this card essentially. So
Yeah.
this dot card gets archived
Hmm.
Yeah.
if you want to look at it in programming terms.
Gotcha. I think also to add to that question about the inflection point, I think you were talking earlier about understanding like when you can win the race, right? And like it made me reminded me of like Keyforge. We talked about running out of gas before with Behawk, where like you have to understand when you have enough gas to get to the finish line, to
Mm-hmm.
the end of the third lap of Mario Kart, so to speak. And there is certainly a point where you're like, okay, like my opponent's answers are gone as long as I go to 12, because they're not going to be able to cycle back to get their amber control and take me off of two keys. So like understanding that inflection point and maybe like going further or trying not to play into something maybe. So yeah, I think it is pretty interesting to think of in terms of either Dominion or Keyforge, and understanding like here's my win condition and there's not really anything anyone can do about it. Recognizing those situations is very
Mm-hmm.
hard, and just being able to like flip that switch and understand that you've reached that point is very difficult to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm. Cool. Well, I know we had a couple other points you want to hit on this topic before we shift gears a little bit. Do you want to
Mm-hmm.
move on to either of those, or kind of shift gears now?
Um, yeah, sure. So, um, yeah, I think I'll skip over the bonus, but yeah, I think um, one thing that you can do in looking at these Dominion puzzles and to some extent, Keyforge puzzles as well, can help you build intuition for the bizarre.
Mm.
Like I think of an example where like I played Ron's key up on turn one, and like okay, it's gonna die at some point. Then my opponent plays the Killzord Mark 9001 upgrade on it, and it's like okay, um, I normally wouldn't advocate for this, but I think the right play is to just gain a bunch of amber and try to win at time.
And the kill sword obviously gives it skirmish, so you could not choose to kill it.
Right, basically, I mean, I have other ways to kill it, but it makes it harder, and you get into a game state where whoever removes the bronze key up is at a disadvantage because their opponent's going to forge first.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
But yeah, in that particular game, my opponent had like double Marzine to amber, and that ended up just moving a bunch of my amber out of my pool onto my creatures, and the imp got killed anyway, and we didn't go to time. But that is the kind of thing where like, okay, this isn't a kind of situation that comes up normally, but like when you're in it, you're like, okay, what do I do here? How do I handle it? And so I think that's what thinking about puzzles and such um, helps you build.
I like
Yeah,
that.
very cool.
I like that.
All right, so if we have time later, I do want to go back to the other bonus because
I
that's an interesting.
I feel bad skipping over the bonus. I want to go to it. Can we do the bonus, please?
Yeah, okay, yeah. I'm the guest, so yeah, let's do it.
Awesome, awesome.
We both like that bonus. I thought that was really interesting, so I'll let you take it.
Yeah, so I don't know. At some point, growing up, I found this book in our library called Chess for Tigers, and it's written by some chess coach, but the idea is that whatever strength of player you're at, you're a tiger, and you play against other tigers. You might play against like rabbits, like players who are weaker than you, um, or you might play against heffalumps. So a heffalump is much stronger than you. You're not going to fight it. You're not going to win in a face-on fight. So what the author suggests is what you do with a heffalump is you run out into the swamp and hope that it sinks first.
This is we've I didn't know about this. Like I didn't know about this concept, this book, but when I read that, I was like, oh my God, we've literally talked about this concept before,
Yes.
and it's so fascinating that we've come to that same conclusion. JT and I have both played chess before. I've read some chess books, but not this one, and I thought that's a really interesting sort of I don't know analogy, anecdote, or what's the term? Allegory
Hmm.
for
Yeah,
gaming.
yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of my games, my play style is like, okay, I'm gonna go out to the swamp and beat you with experience.
This is just like the book for Guadalupe, the periodically spiky,
Yeah.
quick draws adaptive deck of choice. Yeah, like let's step over here. There are lots of crazy artifacts. We'll see what happens, but I guarantee one of us is gonna sink into the muck in the swamp. Yeah.
What it reminds me of though is, we've had discussions about one of my rules that I always live by when I play any competitive game is always assume your opponent is better than you.
Mhm.
And I do that so that I don't try to lay traps that aren't necessary. If I assume that my opponent is better than me, I want to find the right line for me to win and to know I can win. But if I find myself like in moments of weakness being like, "Ooh, I'm going to put this out here and hopefully they don't fight it." And it might be a suboptimal play if they like to just play that creature, like say like go out of my way to play a Fandangle. And then I need to assume that like they're going to recognize like the right way to handle it and because they're a good player. And so I always assume they're better than me for that reason. But the Heffalump story I think is interesting because it's like if you are up against someone who's better than you, then maybe you have to recognize that your best chance is making a gambit like that.
Yeah,
And kind of understanding the situation and who you're up against in the competition, um, you know, don't bring a knife to a gunfight kind of thing, I think is really interesting. And it relates a lot to like adaptive theory that I've had too, where like I don't bring Winds of Exchange to adaptive. And the reason is because of the variance that it introduces with tokens, where like you could play two games, and one game that you play with your own Winds of Exchange deck, it falls over itself because all your good cards were tokenized. And then the next game, your opponent doesn't tokenize anything good, and they just clean up with you. And so I have, yeah, I've been pretty vocal about not wanting to bring those kind of decks to adaptive, but if you're a tiger and you're facing a bunch of heffalumps, then maybe that's your best bet.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely yeah. Figure out what works for you, what you have experience with, and yeah, like it's the best players. Yeah, they're probably going to have thousands of reps in and all sorts of random scenarios, and they have an idea of how to play with it, but maybe they don't, and just get things to where it's so confusing that it's easy to make a mistake. It's easy for you to make a mistake. It's easy for them to make a mistake,
Hmm.
and hope and try to be the one who makes the second to last mistake.
Is there a flip side where you have your very complicated your deck, which is capable of producing very complicated game states, and you maybe identify that you're up against a rabbit. Maybe you think that you were heavy favorite just on quality of card and your deck and player skills reasonably matched, or you think you've outmatched your opponent on both respects. Do you just discard those like artifacts that create make wacky things happen, right? Your tide warp mecha buoy things, like, or your static collection arrays. Is that a case where you discard those, or you think you still play them out and walk into the swamp willingly, even knowing that you are a rabbit, or you have a rabbit in tow as a tiger, right?
Yeah. I don't think I have enough experience in those types of situations.
With rabbits and tigers, yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah.
Thought exercise for the listener, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Or maybe Quick Draw knows. Have you ever found yourself discarding some of the artifacts in Guadalupe that heavily complicate things, believing
So
that you, yeah.
I'm not going to fall for the trap that you're laying because you want me to spill more secrets on Guadalupe because I'm playing against not tonight in the finals of the KTL this week. So I'm not going to fall for it. I'll share more of my Guadalupe secrets next week.
Okay, deal.
At a high level, I sometimes play them, I sometimes discard them, but it is almost always about the situation immediately in front of me. And the tricky part about Guadalupe is that there are some specific matchups where if you get the Ulfbert device in your opening hand, you're playing it. But if you get the Ulfbert device halfway through the game, you're discarding it. And
Mm,
so understanding where you are in the game is important. And I think it's tricky and adaptive because you might think in game two, like if you're playing with a deck like that, well, you're like, well, I saw my opponent play Ulfbert device game one, so it's probably the right thing to do in this matchup. And they play it, but it's the wrong time and for the wrong reason, and that's when it kind of gets you into trouble. So it is a very, I think, with a lot of the double-sided artifacts, is a very fluid situation, and you have to understand not just the matchup, but where you are in the middle of that game as well, and see if it is the right time to play it.
mm. Okay, sage words. We'll look forward to that matchup, and then Quick Draw's notes afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably going to lose now. Not tonight, discarding the Ulfbert device, something like that.
Something like that.
Um, all right, so we are going along, which is great. I'm having a wonderful time chatting with you, Hiram Graff, and we had another. There's plenty more to talk about, so I am not cutting us short by any means. I'm excited to keep going, as long as you have the time for us as well. So
Yep. I'm here all night.
awesome.
All right, right on.
Um, so there were two parts to this that we want to go over tonight. One was like kind of your experience with Dominion and how it's related to Keyforge for you, and the second being that you've kind of dubbed yourself as a semi-competitive player. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I kind of want to, hear more from you about what that means, because that's a little bit of a, I don't know, some might think that's sort of an oxymoron to hear that, and they're not really sure how to interpret that.
Yeah. So for me, you think of competitive teams like Team SAS, Team Reapout. Those are the big two. Um, the players who are definitely very much into Keyforge. Like I'm sure they have a full time job because they're making money to buy the decks somehow. But Keyforge is like their full time second full time job. Uh,
I can
the
relate.
practice and all that they're putting into that. For me, yeah, um, I don't want to make Keyforge my second full time job. I mean, I enjoy it. I have fun playing it. I have the most fun playing it when it's playing competitively. But but that doesn't need to be at a vault tour level. It can be like at a chainbound level or a excuse me, or a like the time shapers events or things like that we used to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, and unfortunately, I think a lot of those more casualish events have gone away because casualist players have kind of drifted away from the game. Um, but yeah, I enjoy playing it. When I do play, I want to play to win. I'm not going to go out and drop $1,000 on a deck that I think could win a vault tour. But if I show up and I bring one of my better decks, and maybe I can spoil a game for someone.
Hmm. Yeah, so you're really about, you're not gonna, it's not gonna be a lifestyle game for you necessarily, but you're still gonna be excited to go to a major event and compete, but you're
Hmm.
not just gonna like, you know, spend the time or the money that might be necessary to be like, yeah, I'm gonna get top four, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like if there's a deck I like, I can practice with it, but I'm not going to be practicing with it, 7 days a week or for 2 months straight. It's more
But
of a
once you're in the game, you're a competitive player, is what you'd
yeah,
say.
absolutely.
Yeah, I was. I will admit too, I was taken aback when you initially described yourself as semi-competitive, because my experience playing with you, uh, like I think of you as a very like strong player in game, but there's really, I mean, this is a different axis, right? Like being a strong player in game doesn't necessarily mean that you're, I don't know, identify as a like highly competitive player in the like the larger sense of the game, I suppose,
Hmm.
which is totally fair. And I think we've had some similar kind of similar sentiments from some past guests as well. So hopefully that rings true. But do you think that there's a differentiation in your mind between terms, or these is just semantics, between semi-competitive or more like casual competitive, or more casual versus competitive, I would say.
Um, I suppose there's a spectrum to it. There's definitely the kitchen table, just playing with friends, family.
Mm.
But then there's I think I do like the prestige or whatever that comes from being seen as a strong player, as someone who, if you give them a good deck, then I'll do good things with it. But also able to extract the most value out of any deck. That's one of the things I like to do.
Mm.
uh,
You're saying a lot of things that remind me of what Richard Garfield has talked about with the game too, like, you know, being the best player with a particular deck, like understanding that your deck has weaknesses, but getting the most out of it anyway. He's talked about that quite a lot. Another thing that he's talked about as well that this kind of rings a bell with me for is, um, sort of he doesn't want to be the player that brings the best deck. He wants to be the player that beats the best deck, right?
yeah.
And for him, it's like a personal competitive challenge to be able to do that. Like, do you relate to that kind of feeling, and are you that type of player as well?
Yeah, I would relate to that. Yeah, so kind of um, there's different people find different kinds of things fun and rewarding. And one of the articles I put in our show notes is that this very old, I guess like '94 is when it was written. It's an article called "Hearts, Clubs, Spades, Diamonds."
Mm-hmm.
It was talking about the context was people who were playing in muds, or at the time were basically the text precursors to MMOs these days. In fact, MMOs like EverQuest and Ultima were originally called um, graphical muds before someone came up with the term MMORPG. So, but you've got this game that different people come to and play. Why do they like playing it? Why do they enjoy playing it? So, you know, um, they kind of they grouped it into the four playing suits to make it easier to remember. But spade or like hearts are people who are there for socializing. They that's their main reason. Spades are people who like exploring, like exploring the game world, exploring the game systems. Diamonds would be people who are interested in achievement. Like whether that's a speed runner trying to get the best speed, best time on his leaderboard, or things like that. And then the last one, which doesn't apply to Keyforge so much, is clubs, which is people who are doing PvP and ganking. That's not so much Keyforge. Not really a walk up to a random person and challenge them to a game and beat them and take their lunch money and all that. But
You haven't seen
Uh,
the Coliseum channel on the Sloppy Lowing server, the internal one where Crusader just walks up to people and says, "Fight me now, I'll take
yeah,
your lunch
true.
money." But that aside,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So personally, I definitely identify very much in that spades category of exploring and yeah, part of that exploring is like, okay, you've got the achiever has got their great deck, but you come up with a brilliant counter to it, and it may be the best deck, but you've got one that can beat it. Yeah, it probably wouldn't win an overall event, but it's good at countering some of the particular storm deck.
Hmm.
I think that's what is it's kind of the same sentiment that you're talking about with from Garfield.
Yeah, and so so these are really like psychographic profiles, I believe is the term for them, right?
Yeah,
Uh, and they've been taken in other games as well. Like everyone is probably most familiar with Magic the Gathering, but Caller Discovery podcast made some for KeyForge a number of years ago when they were in their run. Um, and you kind of said that like clubs don't really exist in KeyForge, but diamonds, spades, and hearts, you would say they do. Yeah.
yeah. There's definitely you can look at the player scene and pick people out who are in those categories.
Do you think there are more categories in KeyForge that are not covered by those three?
Um, Maybe. I could I it's not no category system is perfect.
Hmm.
And this one it's from '94. It's a long time ago, but it's been in the electronic game design body of knowledge for decades now, and I think it's got some things that can be useful in tabletop design space as well. And thinking of a and Keyforge, Keyforge is inherently a two-player game, but then you're talking about a tournament of Keyforge players. That becomes a multiplayer game, or sorry,
Busted. I was
busted.
waiting
Yeah,
for it. I was waiting for it.
it comes a mini-player game. Um,
Yeah, yeah, excellent. The framework is just a very interesting lens to like even look back at my own personal history with the game, and how my like relationship with the game has changed over time. There have been periods where like I have been very much a heart, and like this is a social outlet for me. I'm here to socialize with people, and then there have been periods where like I am here as a diamond, like I'm here to win. I'm looking for the best deck, and like I'd say I'm probably, I mean, everybody, like, sure, like painting everybody as just one thing is a little bit, not realistic. Everybody's got a mix of these at some level, to be sure. But I'm
mhm.
probably, looking at this in the like diamond spade hard. I don't know. I feel like it fluctuates a lot, but I like it as a lens to like organize my thinking and like look back at kind of my relationship with the game, and even then to like as I'm looking at game founds and like, ooh, what should I, how much should I like, or should I, back this or what, and like, well, thinking about my like relationship with the game in that respect too, it's kind of interesting to put it through these lenses. Like if I'm a diamond, then probably means I am, and not that that means I have to, but it's just kind of interesting to kind of reflect through that lens. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, personally, I think like spades would be my primary thing, but the diamonds would be my secondary, if you call it that.
Mm-hmm.
So
It
that's where I land on those spectrums.
it sounds like it. I mean, certainly once you sit down, right? Because as you're saying, you sit down. Now I'm trying to win, trying to achieve the spike in us would say I'm trying to like demonstrate a mastery of the game. Like that's true whether you're an Archon player trying to find the best deck or you're an adaptive player trying to show that you've like got the best grasp of the game's mechanisms and can best evaluate a deck or matchup in terms of chains or what have you, right? Like that's very much a diamondish behavior in both respects for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm having trouble picking just one or two. Like I definitely feel like I relate to all three of them. Like I think my energy in the game definitely comes from the social aspect of it and
Mm.
being able to collaborate with people and even do stuff like this is like just really enjoyable for me. But I'm also the kind of player who is going to go to a tournament like a Vault Tour and be there to win it, like, and do everything I can leading up to that to do that. Um, but then, like, at a more casual level, just playing, I'm definitely more of a spade where I'm like, I just want to like play a bunch of different things and try different things, and you know, um, I'm much more likely to play 100 decks one time than one deck 100 times. So.
Here's a question though for you, right? You're going to a vault tour. Are you going to take the cool deck that's not going to win but shows your buddies how creative you are, or are you going to take the deck that's less fun but has a chance of taking down the event
Um, in Keyforge, I am going to take the deck that's less fun.
and has a chance to take down the
Uh,
event? Yeah.
but when I played CCGs and there was more of the deck construction, I said it right, where you go into the event, like building your deck and having a customizable deck you can play. I was very much in the like, I'm going to do something a little off the wall, unexpected, and try to like prove a point that way. So I'm a different type of player in a different game, I think.
That's fair.
So question.
Yeah.
So when you on those events, were they Swiss events?
Yes.
Were yeah, yeah. Would you change what deck you played if it was a 2LO event?
Um, you're talking about in other games or in Keyforge?
In
Like if
other
I
games? Yeah.
in other games, that's really interesting. I've never. So the other game that I played is Star Wars CCG, where they are Swiss. The top cut is basically everyone that finishes X and two. So
Hmm.
it's not two loss out. You have the ability to lose two games. I've never thought about it in the context of like, what if I can only lose one game and no more? Um, I've played in match play where match
Hmm.
play is like it's basically just a 64 player bracket, and that is definitely a different type of deck that you'd bring because you're going to see who your opponents are. You're going to try to have an understanding of like what style of play they are,
Hmm.
and you're going to do something that's like not going to leave you exposed because if other people are doing the same thing to you, then you don't want to be like the predictable one that everyone's going to tech for and make sure that like, oh yeah, we know what quick draw is playing, we just have to do this and you'll beat them. So I do a little off the wall things for that as well. But the 2-0 question is a good one, and I think
Hmm.
like going into an event knowing like I can only lose one game, probably I would have a different approach than an event where I'm like I can lose two games.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I've found is that I understand the reason behind 2LO, and it's definitely they're great. There are definitely strong reasons for changing that, but those changes very much benefit the achievers, the people who are going to win,
Mm.
and people like me who like, well, I make it possible for other people to get to rounds 3 and 4. Uh, I would like to, be able to continue playing for, 5 or 6 rounds. And I may not be in contention for top cut, but I'd like to find, am I going 4-2 or am I going to go 2-4 or 1-5? Where do I stand against the rest of the field, the rest of the people who aren't at the very, very top?
Hmm.
So that's interesting. So you're saying that maybe knockout formats 2LO being one of them. Uh, this is sort of kind of on its face saying, hey, we're setting this up as an event for diamonds or for folks who are kind of celebrating that sort of achiever mentality, as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to your spades who want to explore interactions and might want to jam games all event, whether or not they're in contention for the top cut or not. Yeah, or
Yeah, I
your
mean,
hearts who want to sit down against a new person and have an
mhm.
interaction with the human for 6 rounds, uh, as it were. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and there's people who are going into it for an achievement, and they can't make top cut anymore and they drop. That definitely affects the way that the event plays out for everyone else. But obviously, can't hold people hostage if they're not finding it fun. So, but how that those drops affect everything, at the higher end of play. So it makes sense why they would focus like that. But
Mm-hmm.
my experience going to Vaultier in Dallas and in KFC is that once um, once I'm out, like um, there's not much meaningful play there. It does sound like from the write up of the last Vault Tour that they're a lot more structured with Second Amber this year than they were last year. So that's a good thing, I think. Having to find your own opponent was pretty difficult, not easy.
Hmm. I was going to ask if the second Amber did it for you last year, and it sounds like it didn't.
No, not really. I mean, because yeah,
Yeah.
people could bring whatever deck they want to second Amber. So maybe they tried a deck and it didn't work, so now they're playing with what they know is a really good deck. Um,
Hmm.
so like having that, not having the same deck for second Amber as for the main event is, um, a li- yeah, a little disappointing for me.
So you want to, you know, keep keep playing that same deck and honing your skills with it against the same competition, but you're saying that ability to change decks kind of changes your experience as well. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's got that potential to change things. Because I'm not finding out how well I'm doing against the decks that people brought for the
Yeah.
main event.
Yeah.
Hmm. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have a outside of, it sounds like the more structured second amber, but do you have something that would kind of make you something that could be, actionably changed with the current Vault Tour structure that would make it more appealing to a player of your style?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I think that discovery aspect, that's not present much in the vault tours. I don't know that, and it may be that vault tours are not designed to be that, and that's if that's not an event for me, that's fine. I just need to know that, but yeah, I don't know if like maybe having some sort of like special lore things that are only given out at vault tours or other things like that. The vault master decks are nice, but on the other hand, it's also like, okay, so I'm paying $100 for the opportunity to spend another $60 on decks.
And that's like the main takeaway is like the main giveaway, not even give, but the main thing you can walk home with is something that
Yeah,
you're paying more money for, and it is a deck that is potentially something that the diamonds are going to be most interested in anyway, right?
yeah. I mean, so yeah, I mean, the vault master decks that I got were definitely fun to explore. I like them. I got like a quad mother deck in one, got a
Hmm.
Battlefleet key advection in another.
Nice.
So they're definitely things that they weren't like off the charts powerful or anything, but I enjoy playing with them. Um, it is a, a unique card pool, and so that every deck with a unique card pool, you see different things, different combos that you haven't seen before. So I like that, but I'm not, you know, I'm not jumping to go spend $100 so that I can spend more money on decks.
Hmm.
Hmm.
But seeing something that was more appealing to deck exploration or better curated side events, you think would
Yeah,
would maybe change your mind about whether or not that $100 is worth it?
yeah. Like now that sealed is a main event, that's definitely where I would focus my energy on. Um, but if I did go,
Hmm. I, you had a note, and I wanted to ask you about this too. The two experiences, you had two very different decks that you played. One was a Worlds Collide deck, if I'm remembering right, and one was a Winds of Exchange deck. We actually faced each other at KFC, and I got to face off against the Worlds Collide deck, I believe. Um,
did, did I play you in that?
we
I
did.
know we played at some point. Okay, so yeah, um, yeah, so in Dallas, I took the Winds of Exchange deck.
Mm-hmm.
I was very lucky that my name deck Falconer hyramgraff very much fits my playstyle in that it's a heavy subsidies deck with two Keeper of the Master of the Vault and like double mix the tall minded. So lots of ways to increase key costs, lots of ways to take all that amber away. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I like it. It was fun. I when Winds of Exchange first came out, played it, took it to a local, and went 3-0 against three prospector decks. So I was like, okay, it's good. And I took it to the vault and I played, and I forget what exactly happened. Like I maybe had like one low roll, but it was usually 2 rounds and out. So I was a little disappointed with how my performance went, but I still had fun playing it.
Hmm. I
Um,
I've also had a chance to play against this deck. I think in a fun tournament that the villains ran, Cloggin ran. I want to say, um,
Mm.
and this deck is one after my own heart. I love some heavy subsidies, Martyr of the Vault, Knight of Pult shenanigans. Very very fun.
yep,
Excellent. Yeah, excellent.
yeah, or things like using, having a Martyr of the Vault on the board, and your opponent thinking, oh, you can't kill it because everything I've got is four or less, and then calling Mars and playing exterminate, hitting your own Martyr of the Vault.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Love it. I love it.
Nice.
Cool. So that
Yeah,
was the
so yeah,
yeah.
that's another kind of puzzle kind of thing that that lateral thinking of, well, exterminate doesn't say that I have to target opponent creatures. I can kill my own creatures with it.
Yeah.
I actually find myself most often realizing that I can kill my own creatures with exterminate on TCO when I have to.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly. It's
Oh, yeah.
it's a lot of like mental processing in my head before I even play the card. Like, is this gonna actually hurt me? Like, I
Yeah,
need to think about this.
yeah.
Um, Someone in the chat mentioned Menagerie. Would you say Menagerie at Vault Tours worked for
Mm.
you for that like more casual experience, or was the fact that that was like scheduled your own games another thing that made it more of a burden?
Nashville was fun. Um, so, my experience, the first deck I opened, um, one of the Menagerie packets was Revna Star Song, and the whole deck had one token creation card
Mm,
in Unfathomable.
yeah,
So that was a negative experience, and
yeah,
I
I
think
had a
that
similar experience.
GG realized that after the fact of, yeah, okay, that we know what we were going for, but we failed that one.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience. One of my Menagerie packets was Tangaika, and I had Primordial Vault and one other card to make tokens. And so I pretty much just had a bunch of dead cards in my deck.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
This
But yeah,
is
but in my second Menagerie deck, I got lucky and pulled a Keyrack in house, so that was fun.
cool.
Perfect.
It
Yeah,
wasn't
that sounds.
doesn't play very well, but it was fun.
But it was fun to discover that, I'm sure. Like to
Yeah,
have that total new experience, that surprise that it was in there must have been a really cool feeling.
This is
yeah,
although interesting to me though. With respect to semi-competitive players, right? You show up and you say, "Okay, I'm here. I want to be competitive when I sit down and play." Right?
mm-hmm.
The Menagerie, I had a lot of fun with Menagerie. I had a lot of fun playing Menagerie. But to me, that is me wearing my spades hat. Right? That is not me wearing my diamonds hat when I'm sitting down to actually play. Right? Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
which is fine. It's just like if you came there looking to scratch your diamond itch in actual gameplay, it's a little bit of a different experience to me.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is, and that's fair. But I enjoyed KFC being, there was more exploration. Having the Grim Reminders opening. You know, it was also nice to be in the events, the Archon event that I was in, because like 32 or 64 of the best players were over in a different room, not playing in the event. So I knew I didn't have to face them. They're playing Worlds, and I'm playing the qualifier for next year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And your other deck, Laszlo the Nearly Mellow, was the one you played at KFC. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, that one's got a bit of a story behind it because I remember when Big Z ran the Fire Sale Frenzy after a bunch of World Collides decks were sold off at, like, was it $10 per display,
Yep.
Hmm.
and yeah, so pulled up like 50, 90 plus SAS decks, and you got drafted out. I played Laszlo, did really well with it. Ended up taking fourth in the tourney out of
Nice.
40 players.
Nice.
So, and it's another deck that people call definitely a hyramgraff style of deck. Yeah, it's not a play style that's not for everyone. But the person who bought that happens to live in the Houston area, so I asked if I could borrow it, and he said yeah. So I did. Um, I played round one against someone who was local to Minnesota and had been playing about 7 months, and that was kind of game where you end up like playing with one hand tied behind your back with the hopes that you're not like totally crushing your opponent. Hoping, trying to at least let them have some fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
can't relate to that. I just played my brother tonight. He's still learning the game and trying to determine. And I brought my best deck, and I was like, "What are you gonna do? Like, finish the game with zero keys, zero amber. Like, get better. What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Quickdraw has tried all the carrots to get his brother to play. He's like, well, here
Yeah,
comes the stick. Here's the 100 sass GR deck I
yeah,
just opened. Are we having fun yet? No.
yeah. I mean, I tried the middling decks. It didn't work.
Uh,
So I was like, let's try this one now. But, um, yeah, I know. Like, some people though, some people, I don't want to say like, uh, this isn't like a negative thing about these people, but some people enjoy playing a type of game that like makes their opponent want to quit. Like
Yeah.
to be able to pull off like the gang or not in the AOA release event, like for some people is like, yes, let's go. Like, let's do it. Let's just,
Yeah.
you know,
I
go
guess you could
wild
call
with
those
this.
people the clubs of Keyforge.
Yeah, you might be able to. Yeah.
why do I feel like you are looking at me making eye contact through Zencaster when you say
No, no,
that?
no,
But
no, no. I would never say that about you. You like people to have a much longer, slower, more painful death than Gang or Not offers.
okay,
Gang or
thank
Not
you,
is
thank you.
pretty straightforward. You're like, no, you're going to sit at this table for an hour and a half, and we're turning the timer off, and you're not allowed to quit.
uh, nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, at KFC round two, I ended up playing against Ben the Monkey, which I think he was the eventual winner, correct?
I believe
Yes.
so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a great game. I was able to pull some plays, or he wasn't expecting it, and he's like, oh, sat back and had to think through. So it was a very fun game, round two. I I hadn't practiced Lazo against Worlds or Windsor Exchange decks, so I knew that I was going to be at a disadvantage against those going into the tournament. Um, it also didn't help that two of the three E-dies in that deck were in the bottom six cards, and
Mm.
Mm.
so playing the Soul Snatcher meant that the game finished before I got to draw those. So, but it was fun. It was close. Like I almost beat the person who turned out to win the whole event, which that's the kind of thing I was going for. And then, but yeah, after that, I completely blanked on what happened in round three. So,
That may have been when we got paired up. It could have been. I'm positive that
yeah,
we played in the main event of that tournament, and I
yeah,
remember vividly having many villains sitting around me. There was you and Barsidius, both there,
yeah.
and maybe one other. Was there one
But
other villain there? I forget. May have been.
if we played, it had to be round three because I didn't make it to round four.
Okay, it was round three. It was round three. Yeah.
So yeah, so it was nice to play that. I mean, I was disappointed that I lost in 3 rounds, but it was fun to play. But at the same time, I had to borrow a deck that I think like multiple hundreds of dollars was paid
Mm-hmm.
for that deck. And I was only able to play it because I know the guy who does have it, and he was playing something else.
Hmm. So the owner of this deck went to KFC as well. Is that what you're saying, or?
Uh, I missed your question because I
Oh,
think
sorry. You said that you know the owner of this of Laszlo, and are you saying that they also went to KFC and they played something different and you got to play this? Is that right?
yeah, they were in the World Championship playing a different
Okay,
different deck or alliance. I forget which event he
gotcha.
was in.
Yeah, this very much looks like a JT Russell deck with the
Soul
Soul
Snatcher.
Snatcher,
Mm-hmm.
Key to Dis, Eddies, and
And the
the Graph.
graft. And the graft.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yummy. Yeah, has notes of oddly nefarious Carl mixed in there
Yes,
for
it
sure.
does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
love it.
and then I was didn't actually get to pull it off, but one of the things I tried doing in the fire sale frenzy was to get a Snags mirror lockout, but never managed to pull that off. Almost got locked out once myself, but that didn't happen.
Yeah.
You got to ride the lightning sometimes, you know. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, so I mean, it was fun. I think definitely more likely to go to KFC than a vault tour again. But because of that, if I'm not there to let other people get to round two or three, then it's someone else's who's going to be bouncing out in round one or two or three. And then I'm afraid that um, it's the event's going to stop being fun to enough people that you get into this vicious cycle where the event, the attendance shrinks and shrinks.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of happening at the moment. Like the attendance in Roseville was definitely less than I think everyone hoped for. Not sure what we're going to get out of Rochester next week.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it certainly changes the feel and the competition if you're playing in a much smaller pool of players than you would have expected.
Yeah. So, again, I totally understand why they've chosen the 2LO format, but, it, again, it has more downsides for, players who are playing for semi-competitively, I guess you
Hmm.
could say, versus the players who are playing for the top end competitive.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is interesting. Like you think about what direction Ghost Galaxy's been trying to shift, like the Vault Tours, and there's definitely been a tilt towards like the highly competitive players, the
Mm-hmm.
not the semi-competitive or the casual. And there's a lot to talk about there. There's a lot to unpack there. I think more should be done for the other types of players because what we're seeing with the competitive field is that it's kind of maybe that player base is smaller than we thought it was, or maybe it's become smaller than we hoped. But I think we're certainly at the point where we need to think about ways to kind of make this game offer something for everybody once again, like it did originally.
So on that note, like, can I talk you guys into hosting events that are more for everyone?
Uh, I am very prone to like influence, and this is something that we've had ideas for a long time, and I think the social pressure will eventually get to me. So I encourage you to encourage me.
Okay. I mean, yeah, from my perspective, like it can just be, simple as a chain bound or, similar to a chain bound kind of thing. Or it could be something like, hey, you get to bring a deck and play it in our events once. And once it's played, it's gone. It's retired.
Are you familiar with Aurora's League that she's running right now on the Time Shapers Discord of a point cap?
I think I've seen that. I've not. Yeah. To me, I'm less interested in more of the um, kind of restrictions and things. Like I like to play pretty much every one of my decks, but I like to play them in like a chain bound or competitive format. So
Hmm.
I have like 100 decks behind me that I would totally, I've never played before, and I would pull out for any sort of Archon event that's semi casual, semi competitive.
Hmm.
But um,
I'm
I'm not
I'm
interested in
yeah.
trying to maximize a deck against some set of rules. I'd rather just pull something out and play it for fun and let's see how well I do with it.
Yeah.
But that's me. That's my style.
Well, I think point cap still offers a bit of that. It may not be exactly what you're looking for, but I would encourage you and anyone else uh, who kind of wants a break from the high end Archon unrestricted to give it a look. It may not be what you're talking about here, and that's okay. And on our server, on the Sloppy Lab Work server, we do have a channel for running leagues. We have reckless experimentation for talking about different formats, different ideas. So I would definitely encourage you to post over there and share some ideas and pressure me into finally running a league over in our server.
So how can one find your server? Because I think that's one of the Keyforge servers that I'm not in, and I don't
Oh,
know how
we
to
have a
join
cloaking
it.
dongle. So
Hmm.
you need to make sure you look for it twice before you'll find it.
Yeah, get it with
Um,
the elusive. We'll hit you the link, and we'll put one in the show notes
The
too for
the
folks there.
Discord link is in the room of requirement.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd love to run some IRL events too at some point, especially if we can hit either formats that are not official OP formats, or see if there's like a itch that we can scratch. And I know there
Yeah,
are, yeah, folks who'd be
yeah. I've
um,
given some thought along those lines. I mean, I think I even mapped out a you can fit in like 15 rounds of Keyforge in a weekend if you want to go that way. So you could have like 16-player round robin if you want. But again, that's a lot of Keyforge
It's a
over
lot of
2 days.
keyforge.
But it
People,
is possible to fit that much in, not
That
just
would
six
be that
rounds
would
for
be
everyone.
fun, honestly. Like, if you had, I mean, you'd have to have like a nice number like that. Like 16 is good if you're like maxing it out. But if you have anything larger than that, it becomes a little bit untenable. But um,
I'd
and
like
we've
that to have that problem. It's a good problem.
yeah,
it's a good
I
problem.
agree. We've talked to Cloggin before about like potential for some in-person events sometime, and I think it's certainly something that could be very much on the table for 2025.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I don't know. I feel like I'm in too many online leagues. I'm curious though, what some of the formats would be that would be enticing. Because I think too that well, I don't know. I feel like I have a good mix of formats. But yeah, let's keep the conversation going there. I'm very interested. People in the chat saying they know nothing. Who knows what we know? No one knows. I don't know.
Yeah, it's in the random access archive somewhere.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. All right, cool. Yeah, I don't know. I do enjoy Chainbound a lot. At least the idea of it. I think it'd be really cool to have some sort of async Chainbound, as it were. So yeah, I could show up to an event and play 4 rounds, play 4 structured rounds, and accumulate chains or get power level for my deck. But I can also imagine having those like chain bounds be things that get applied, or I can opt into a chain bound game whenever I see you across the room and the like, exclamation mark shows up across on top of my head or whatever, and we rumble right there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. Ooh,
Yeah, I
sleepover
think
format.
when we talk about Chainbound, I think people want it to be something that it's not quite. But I think one of the unspoken values that Chainbound offered back when it was commonly used was that it was a reason for you to go back to your store every week and a reason for you to keep playing. And I think that's what's missing right now. It's like we don't need a format that will balance your locals every week so that everyone is playing like an even matchup. We just need something like that that would make people say like, yeah, man, I don't want to miss a week. I want to maximize the amount of
Mm,
time I can spend, playing these games and exploring different things, and just give people a real reason to say like, yeah, I want to make sure that I can make it every single week.
yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I loved about Chainbound was that everyone could have their own different goals into what they're playing. Whether that's okay, I'm going to get a deck and get it up to 13 chains, or I'm going to like Cloggins. I'm going to take this really bad deck, the Never-Ending Priestess, and try to get chains on it. Somehow win 2 games in a 3 game out of 3. Or like me, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to pull a new deck every week, and I'm going to see how I do with it.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and maybe someone is just trying to find their best deck and just play every week and try to win every week, and that's fine too. And they're going for their own experience. But none of those things really hinge on like balance or imbalance of the game. Like everyone has their own goals, like you're saying, and reasons that they're playing that. And if your goal is to go there and say, I want to make sure that I play Khaleesi Dragon, like that's your goal for the week. You
Mm-hmm.
can go and have fun, and it doesn't matter if you win or lose, but like you have that goal in mind when you go there.
Yeah, and that's something that we're not getting from Vaultivers. But again, Vaultivers aren't designed for that. Chainbounds were designed for that.
Hmm.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
the
But
chainbound topic's one I'd love to dive into. I think Riku is experimenting with rebooting chainbounds at some of his locals too, which is decent showing. So I don't know. Curious to see how that goes with getting kind of
Yeah.
rebooted.
And he's got a very large scene. So like with a larger sample size, if you're using Chainbound as a balancing thing, it might work. But I think most local scenes, even my local scene back in Worlds Collide time was like 4 to 8 people, but we met regularly and we played Chainbound every week. And so I think that's a different dynamic than what Riku's trying to go for, which is like much larger player pool.
Yeah,
Dozens of players meeting
Yeah.
weekly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I
And
will say one of the downsides of Chainbound and playing with chains is that I think playing with chains and with against chains is a different experience. It takes a different set of tactics than playing Keyforge without chains. Because if you're um, if you're playing against someone who's only got 4 cards in their hand, um, you know, it makes a lot more sense to push the amber. Push your card advantage. People complain about 2-2-2, but a 2-1-1 is even worse.
Yeah, for sure it is.
uh, well, folks, we have gone long. We are looking down the barrel of a very meaty other topic. I'm gonna say, well, let's table this one for the next time we drag hyramgraff back on and talk about chainbound stuff too. If that's all right with y'all, we'll shift gears, hear from a sponsor maybe, and then play a game perhaps if we're up for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Folks, I should let you all know that this episode of Bottom of the Beaker was brought to you by Mars Second, where mastery of the Crucible meets refined Martian etiquette. Our exclusive finishing school transforms fledgling archons into polished leaders, honing strategic prowess and social grace in equal measure. Learn to navigate the complexities of the Crucible's battlefield with finesse, while mastering the art of diplomacy and charm. Don't just conquer opponents, command respect with every move. Enroll in Mars Second and ascend to the zenith of Martian society, where victory is as elegant as it is inevitable. Yeah, are you guys up on your manners and charm as well as your gameplay prowess? Maybe a little Mars Second, give them some love. I don't know. Coupon codes available in the show notes.
So the Sanctum Knights are no longer the chivalrous ones; it's the Martians.
Maybe the Martians are the ones that need it, and that's why they have the school. But the Sanctum ones, they kind of already got it down, I guess. Your guess is as good as mine. You go to the school and tell us, Quick Draw.
We don't ask questions; we just take their money.
Yes, that's right. Don't badmouth our sponsors. Quick Draw will be out of business.
We'd be both living on the street.
Yes.
We didn't have this bottom of the Beaker money.
Yeah, exactly. And folks, also, I want to let you all know that Bottom of the Beaker is recorded live on Wednesday evenings right here at twitch.tv/sloppylabwork at 9:30 Eastern Time. You can find recordings of our past shows and other streams over at youtube.com. We are at Sloppy Labwork over there. For the very best content, 57 times distilled and scraped from the bottom of the beaker. You can search for that very phrase in your podcatcher of choice. And we'll be there to play Keyforge, to play Dominion, or just to do either semi-competitively, whatever. Thanks so much, hyramgraff, for joining us this evening. It was an absolute pleasure to talk with you.
Yep, thank you for having me. Definitely enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And Quick Draw, got any words for the folks cutting off at the final audio stop?
Thanks for everyone watching. Chat was very engaged tonight. Really appreciate it. Hiram Graff, you've been a tremendous guest. A lot of fun to talk to you. As JT said, we went long and we enjoyed every minute of it. So thanks for coming on. And for anyone else listening, stay sloppy.
Stay sloppy indeed. Okay, folks, I'm going to stop the audio recording. Very good. And we are going to play a little game, I suppose. What should we play? What's a good? We didn't agree on how to cross swords.
No, so we typically ask our guest how many peppers are you looking to play tonight on the very accurate and clear scale of 1 to 5 peppers.
Am I supposed to be bringing a deck? I thought I was jumping in on one of your guys' decks or something.
Well, we can do something like that. So typically, when we play Hand and Brain, it's usually JT and I playing as one side versus the guest.
Okay.
But it sounds like it's unfair, but it's actually unfair to us because typically the hand is playing a deck that belongs to the brain, and the I don't know what's happening in the chat.
That's good. That's
Um,
good. You're a pure soul, Quincy.
yeah. Um, so lost my train of thought. The hand is playing the brains deck, so they're not as familiar with it, and they're playing a deck they've not played before, and something else happening here.
No, no, no. You missed a double entendre that the chat did not. You should just go on with your life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um. Anyway, Hiram Graff, I will let you just decide what we're gonna play and who's
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
play it.
yeah.
I don't even know anymore.
Okay.
If you'd
What?
like to play one of our decks, if you want to be the hand of the brain, we can mix it up and do that. Just know that I can never beat JT Russell on this show.
Okay, that's part of your contract.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it's. I'm not allowed to say that's in my contract or not. It's what's that called? Uh, NDA.
NDA. Yeah. How about make ooh,
Yeah. What if
but
I take one of the decks I've gotten in KFL this season and
okay,
Ooh,
play
all
it?
right,
right on,
all right.
right on. How
And do
about
you want to play against one of us?
Uh,
Like, or do you want to play like? Are we JT and I going to be the hand in the brain?
Whatever you guys want. I'm the guest here.
all right, cool. Quick draw. Let's play one of the decks that's gonna be in my NKFL lineup next season.
Oh man, that could be a reversal deck. I don't know what to do in NKFL next season.
I have
All right.
a
So,
I have a Russell namesake Hexad lined
oh,
up.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that sound
So
fun?
sounds great. So does that mean that I'm going to be the hand?
I think so, and we'll see if we can take on Hiram Graph here.
Okay.
Okay, so what spice level are you going at so I can
Uh,
calibrate?
I have a range. I'd say they range from 4.5 to 3.5 peppers.
Okay.
And SAS wise, if that helps you if you're not fully calibrated to the pepper scale, there is a high SAS GR, 87, 83 mass mutation, and then it bottoms out 71 mass mutation. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Mm,
I have Russell the Perfect in my lineup, which was a trade from another villain, as it were. Spence gave this one to me. Very cool. And then actually, Russell the Just came from, no, sorry, Russell the Naturalist of Grandholm came from JM. From JM. So a bunch of trades in here. Yeah.
okay. Well, I'll try playing Prowler then.
All right. Where would you put the peppers at for Prowler?
Um, so it is. Let's see. I can find that. It's rated at 86 SAS, but I think that's overrated.
Hmm.
So I don't know. It's a WoW deck, so um,
All right. All right. I feel like we should just roll a d6 and take whatever we get out of this lineup. Quick draw. What do you think?
You're the brain, so you're just going to give me a deck, and I'm just going to play it.
All right. Somebody in chat, give me a. I'm gonna say poly d6 here, and there's no bot. Oh, there is a bot. Oh my goodness, we got a 1. We got a 1, which obviously means the first deck. We're gonna do Russell the Inadvertently Unpopular, a 87 SAS GR deck, which I think is overrated. Um,
You just saying that?
I'm just saying that I'm here to crush Hiram Graph's soul in this game. And
You're such a club.
I'm such a club. I really am. You all knew it. Yeah, Archon
All right.
Matrix
So
bot doing poly. Wow, I didn't know that. That's cool.
all right. So I'm going to take Russell the inadvertently unpopular. Um,
Inadvertently unpopular is what people say after they play stream games with us, and we tell them we're going to bring something balanced.
yeah. Ask Orion. Actually, Orion only went to bed, so
Orion went to bed because they were traumatized by the stream game with guests and our lack of honor, as it were.
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna start a game, as is Sloppy Lab Work tradition in beginner, and the password is going to be sloppy, and hands are going to be open to spectators for the brain. But JT promises not to cheat. Um, I think he's cheated a few times on this show, but he claims that he will not cheat right now. So,
Inadvertently.
and I'm already disconnected. That didn't take long. Um, I'm going to make another game on beginner, password sloppy, and let's try this again.
Okay, here we go.
All right, so I have seen this deck. I've not played with or against it before.
Perfect. Already makes
Um,
for great science.
so yeah, couple retro technician Lees, Missile Officer Myers, Near Future Lens, a couple Grave Pixies, Witch of the Eye, Haunting Witch, Spooky Charge, Recklessness, some Brobnar Bros. Okay, good.
Oh,
Seems easy.
Prowler is cool.
Prowler, yeah, Prowler Rymaton, the Outlandish Club. Looks very good. Four mix, three Berserker Slam, Rant and Rive, two scoop ups, Kaboom. So it's got good creature control. It's got an auction off and Star Alliance. That's neat. I'm digging this one. This looks pretty cool.
Yeah,
All
not a
right.
ton of token generation. Got the grunt work, teamwork, a lot of works working for those tokens. Scout Chief, Ragnarok Prep. Okay, okay. But researcher, as it were. Okay, so I get to decide if we're mulliganing, quick draw.
Mm-hmm.
We're going first. We're keeping this hand. Snap keep. Snap keep.
Snap keep. Yeah, I would think so too. And so JT's also going to tell me which house to call.
Okay. We're good. We're going this is where I get to troll the troll the hand. No, we're gonna go Star Alliance. It's gotta be Star Alliance. It's gotta be
All
Star
right.
Alliance.
Yeah, that means that we are going to drop the first turn Near Future Lens, and got my hands full tonight reading the chat log, trying to figure out what's on the top of my deck all the time. At this time, it is Lost in the Wild.
All right, I'm gonna give this a quick refresh. Oh, quick draw did
Yeah.
the same.
So the Near Future Lens image is not working for anyone, is it?
It's not working for me, so that's not just me then.
That is not just you. Near
Okay,
Future Lens image not working.
gotcha. I usually use the half size cards on TCO as well, but I'm not sure if Grim Reminders has those working yet. Um,
All right.
okay, cool. We've got a harvester and a mesmerist. Very nice, very nice. I think we gotta go. No, I gotta scroll and read the chat. Oh, cool. We gotta go untamed. Untamed.
All right. So first thing gonna be, let's play a couple Grave Pixies, I think. And then we're gonna use the Near Future Lens to play the Lost in the Wild. And Witch of the Eye, and discard Reclaimed by Nature.
I didn't think about you playing the card off the top of the deck. I was just thinking about not being drawn yet. But no, I should have gone with a different line, knowing that the Lost in the Wild was there.
Yeah.
Your Future Lens is a weird one to get used to on TCO. I find like
Especially.
yeah, it's either like is it in the hand on top of the deck, or it's just like there has been a deluge of things in the chat, and like, am I going to spend my life reading this chat log or what? Yeah.
Yeah. And playing Near Future Lens alongside things like Event Horizon, Future is Past, it's just like it gets real crazy, really hard to follow. very fast.
It's tough though. I don't know what's a good way to handle that interface wise on TCO. Like, do you flash it? Do you show it visible in hand for a time? Or I think you just assume that once it's been made visible in an online client that it's always visible.
I wish it were highlighted, like the stealth mode and those type of
Hmm.
things. I think that'd be a good thing.
Maybe. But all right, I am neglectful in my duties here. Quick draw. We are now. I have to check that again. Okay. We are gonna go untamed again.
All right, let's play a Rot Feast and a Regrowth to get back that awesome Witch. Play that Witch. Got a Bog Spitter, and then we're gonna drop that Heavyweight Moric on the right to keep that Witch off the flank.
Cool. If there's one card that I hold in this deck, it's the Rot Feast.
I looked for an Amber Storm and did not see it, and I was like, I'm not holding that.
Mm-hmm.
What makes you hold it in this? Is there anything that... Are you just being silent, or can you not hear me anymore?
Oh, I can hear you. I'm having a moment making eyes with the chat, highlighting the card in your hand that makes me hold the Rot Feast.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Oh, the auction off. That's too bad.
Yeah.
It's fair.
Where's your Forgotten Guardian, JT?
What's
going on here?
I know.
I mean, you can just get it back with the Witch, but whatever.
No, it's purged.
That's right. It is purged, isn't it?
Auction off purges.
It be gone.
Also, the image on auction off is broken as well as a Maverick.
Yep.
I bet you it has something to do with Mavericks, anomalies, and because Near Future Lens was an anomaly.
Oh, maybe cards that can appear in other houses.
Yeah,
because
the Mavericks images are not working either.
Interesting.
So
Maybe
JT,
something.
as I understand it, you are a contributor to TCO, and so I feel like this is your fault right now.
Your opinions are, valid to have. Yeah. I can't take that much credit for the contributions that the fine folks have made. Very, very marginal. I feel like we should get some. I just feel so bad not doing Witch of the Eye things when I can do Witch of the Eye things,
Yeah, but those Witch of the Eye things aren't great.
Hey, this is not,
Oh, man.
No table talk time.
If you don't want me to talk, then you should pick a house faster.
Well, now that I feel like you've tried to steer me away from Untamed, I have to double down. So we're gonna go Untamed.
All right. Gonna go Untamed. I am a big fan of Disruption, so I'm just gonna fight, even though you're elusive. And make you discard the Compod. That's nice. Let's reap and take back. Oh, all right. I'll take it, and I'll hold it, and I'm going to discard the Spooky Charge.
Interesting. There's nothing to see here. There are no tricks coming. No tricks coming.
Yeah. Okay.
Ooh, I should scroll us back to the relevant in the chat. Discards the Spooky Charge. Cool, cool. Ooh, selective preservation. Very nice.
Pretty good. Yep. All right, we get a key. I know which color you're picking.
Gotta be red. Gotta be red.
Mm.
I'm committing now, and I'm a liar, so take that for what it's worth. To stick with my red, blue, yellow, red, blue, yellow key order, regardless of what key color mechanics come down the pipe.
Yeah, doesn't matter what Ember Skies does.
Red, blue, yellow. Okay, so let's go Brobnar. Brobnar,
Okay.
if you please.
All right, so we're gonna play the Soul Bomb, and
Interesting.
you do have a lot of creature control, but the preservation's gone. You still got red alert. Got 2 scoop ups and a kaboom. I think I'm actually gonna. I think I'm gonna fight, and then I think I'm gonna scrap the heavyweight Morik.
Wow, cool.
And play a Phoenix Heart.
So here's a question for you, rules question. What happens when you soul bomb, and then the soul bomb kills the Phoenix hearted creature when Rot Feast has been played? Do you get 2 waves of damage? I think so.
I think you do. I think so.
Interesting.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I'd say so.
Let's go Starlance, pick up the archives.
A lot of Star Alliance calls.
Yeah.
Oh, and the token was a red alert.
Yeah, it was, unfortunately. All right, let's look at the top 3 cards.
Yeah, chat. Sequencing of destroyed effects may matter. And then the bounce. I guess if it's destroyed already. Interesting, too. For Rot Feast, a creature that's already tagged for destruction can still be assigned damage? I have to double check that, too.
I would think so.
Cool. Let's go. Let's go back into Brobnar.
Thought you might do that.
I did it.
Let's down to size Hawkins. Let's Berserker Slam. That token. Guji Dinosaur Hunter. And let's just Reap.
Quiet Reap. Very cool.
Blue key first.
Yeah, I was going blue, yellow, red.
Heresy.
I'm a big yellow proponent, and I'm in the minority there. But I rarely see anyone with the blue key first. Haven't seen much margin so far.
See, we hit the Compod from a discard. All right. Speak the Devil's name.
Reap. Yep.
There's a mix.
Whoa. Hmm.
Mm. There you go. So I can rape for 5.
That's spicy. That's a big turn.
Hmm. Scoop up coming. Boom. 4 mix. Quad mix. And we've got 2 mixes here. None in discard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. I think we cash in, or I think I call Untamed.
I think that's definitely the right call because that Mars board is trouble. So I'm gonna play that Rot Feast, which gets us haunted, and then we're just gonna pop the Soul Bomb. And if the Phoenix Heart double triggers, that means that we are gonna get 14 here.
Uh, Probably the Morik will bounce to hand, and we'd get,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
so it's
7,
13.
13.
We
We'll
should get
see.
13, and we got 5 right here. Let's see what happens. Any reactions? So Rot Feast. Okay, so it looks like everything's dying first, and
Hmm.
Phoenix Heart already triggered.
Hmm. It's more like
Oh
7.
wait, I could
Oh,
trigger the Rot Feast. It's still going. Oh, it's double counting. Wow.
holy moly.
These triggers are fun. You guys can't see this, but I like to take my manual triggers one by one and not auto resolve, and it is pretty
Yeesh.
fun choosing every creature in the discard pile and gaining an amber for each one. Um,
Well then, um,
And that was the last time Hiram Raff spoke to either of us.
all right, it happens. I mean, that's a nice combo. I unwittingly played right into it. I should have seen that. So
It's not one you see often. Usually, folks look for the Amber Storm, Amber
exactly.
Storm Rot
Like
Feast. Yeah,
I saw the Rot Feast and did not see an Amber Storm with it, so I was like, okay, it's just a pip right now. I didn't really think much of it.
yeah, I've not played a ton of GR yet. So
we knew
Well,
that and decided to pick on you with the GR deck, right?
I had fun playing Mass Mutation tonight earlier.
You
Uh,
played against or playing with?
Played with.
I thought you were playing your this new high sass GR to
Well, I
torment your
played
brother.
multiple games.
Gotcha.
I tormented him once, and you know, tormented him just as much with a Mass Mutation deck.
Hmm.
So
Well, that's the like one big trick that this deck has. So it's cool that we did it. There are smaller tricks, but that's the big trick. Well, let's go blue key, quick draw, blue key,
all right, blue key it is.
and I like Star Alliance here. I think.
I need a I need a little bit more confidence or assertiveness in the call
Mm-hmm.
here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's go Star Alliance.
Okay. Let's drop down. Do I want to take the Phoenix Heart back? It's not a pip, so I don't think I do. I like pips only. Oh, well, you do have a lot of creatures. What other creature control does this deck have? Got some fighting, Thunderdell, unprepared. Yeah. All right. You know what? I will take the Phoenix Heart back, just in case I need to clear board. Alien Horror with a Proton Siphon. And Scout Pete's going to look at the top of the deck, and
It's going to
going
be
to
an
be
upgrade with a pip,
a keep.
almost certainly.
No, I'm going to leave it on top. It's a good card. But
Okay.
yeah, all right. Well, let's check for key 3 anyway. And being that this is Winds of Exchange, there's not a whole lot that can be done except drop like 3 mixes here.
We saw the Rant and Rive.
Well,
We'll see.
2 of them are in the discard pile. So
So there's like 6 left.
4 in deck, yeah.
No, I mean 6 mixes left. There's a lot of mixes in that deck.
A lot of mixes. In the mix, as it were. Yeah, 2 here would be key cost 12. That's a tall order. We'll see. Mm-hmm.
He's gonna make a sweat at least.
Always.
all right, well, there's one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't have it.
Yeah. GG. It would have been a very different game had JT not very cheekily kind of hinted that maybe I should hold on to that Rot Feast.
Was that too much table talk? Maybe we should ban the. I think it's kind of good to get the chats in there. I don't know, but maybe it was too much table talk. Chat does not approve. Chat thinks that we had bad form.
Bad form. Yeah, Orion would probably agree. We did the
2
same
of the
thing to
Berserker
Orion.
Slams are still in the deck.
2 Berserker Slams still in deck. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Rant and Rive came very early. Yeah, and could have been super beneficial there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mulliganed into it, so not
That's
much
tough.
you can do about that.
It is tough. Yeah. That's a spicy teamwork you got there. Teamwork with the damage and a drop hip on it.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Teamwork with damage and draw. Let's see. Yeah.
I like that. You got a few plays out of it. All right. Well, that is the. We got to come up with a name for that hand and brain when we're like, oh, don't worry, it's a disadvantage anyway, and then we just drop something silly on the gas. We got to come up with a real name for that. If you got some suggestions, let us know in the in our Discord server.
Was that backgammon format where you've got the general and they've got the advisors? Something?
I don't know about that. I'll have to look into it.
I'm trying to remember. But yeah, it's like to have you have one person who's on their own, and then you have another person who's playing against them, but they have everyone else who's in the event is advising the. I think it's called general or something, but the goal is to be the sole player as long as you can.
That's cool. Yeah, we may have to formalize the rules on what's allowed when you're doing a retrospective on the previous turn, if it's going to affect future turns. Yeah,
I think it's a different dynamic with Grim Reminders as well, because it's like, yeah, you played that card last turn and you should have held it, and I'm like, oh well, it's Grim Reminders, I can just take it back to my hand now.
the recursion at max, recursion at 11. Yeah, could be. But cool. Well, fun times.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on, hyramgraff. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Right on. And we'll sign off there. So thanks too for the chat for hanging out. And yeah, hyramgraff as well for hanging out and playing a game. And folks, we'll see you all around the lab.
See you guys.